most of the time you'll see me building dominoes only on the floor, but this time I want to do something a little bit different. What's up, Domino community? This is episode 3 of my Freestyling a Domino project series, where I go really in depth on my thought process as I make these domino projects, and you can kind of get a sense of what's going on in my brain, so hopefully, you'll be able to learn a little bit and maybe apply some of my thinking to your own domino projects. Now, this is going to be a really fun episode because I am using tables to elevate the dominoes and build on higher surfaces, and I love doing this. I think it makes domino projects just so much more interesting when you can build on different types of surfaces, and you don't need a lot. Like, you could literally just get like a piece of cardboard or some cardstock or foam core, put it on a chair, elevate it with some books, and there you go. You have like a homemade table. Now, I'm actually going to be using some tables that you may have seen in a previous BMAC domino event. Shout out to Shane's Dominoes and Shane's Dominoes dad, who made these tables and painted them and generously gave them to me after the event. They've just been sitting in my domino storage area, and I wanted to use them because they're just really cool and I like the colors, and it just seemed like the right opportunity to try it out in this freestyle project. So I got all the tables out. I even got my fall wall. I was just thinking, I want to make something that is really tall, or something that goes on the floor and then goes back up and then maybe goes back down. So I started rearranging the tables, seeing, okay, which tables do I want to use? And by complete coincidence, I chose the same colors as the ones in the domino cube structure that I made in the previous video. And I kid you not, this was not on purpose. It wasn't until I was actually FaceTiming with one of my friends and he told me like, oh, that actually matches the cube structure. And I was like, whoa, you're right. That is amazing. I just thought that was pretty funny. Anyways, I started rearranging the tables and seeing how I wanted to lay them out on the floor. And I thought, maybe it would be cool to just have them gradually go up. So the first table is close to the ground, and then the second one is a little bit higher, and then the next one is a little bit higher than that. And I even had this large white table that I could put at the very end, which kind of matched the white color of the cube structure as well. So that's how I arranged it. But I ran into a few issues as I was doing this. Firstly, whenever I build a domino project, I have to think about how I'm going to film it at the same time, because sometimes domino projects can only be viewed from a very specific angle, and in this case, with the dominoes underneath the table, those have to be filmed from a very low camera angle that's close to the ground. Otherwise, the top of the table will block it. So it made me think, this is going to be tricky to film, and at the same time, it's going to be tricky to see because the table is actually, it blocks the light, so it's really hard to see underneath the table. And I really wanted to get around this problem because I think it's cool to have dominoes underneath the table and like go around and then it goes back on top. But if you can't see it, then it kind of ruins the effect in a way. So I wanted to see like maybe I could put some sort of light underneath the table and like maybe spice it up in that way. So I found these old light stacks. These are just blocks that light up and you can put them together. And I tried rearranging those and putting them underneath the table, but this was kind of a failed attempt because, well, firstly, even though I plugged it in, the light would randomly just like go out for some reason. And also it was really heavy, so I wasn't really sure how to attach it to the top of the table without it falling over. I didn't have any hot glue and I'd want to take it off after, so that would just kind of be a mess. So I scrapped that idea and I thought, maybe I could actually just get like these LED light strips and put them under the table, because that way, it's not going to be heavy. It's really easy to attach. I can control it with my phone and maybe even change the colors. Like, I could do something really cool with that. I was able to tape the LED lights underneath the table and it lit up the entire area underneath it perfectly. So when I set up the dominoes underneath the table, it looked really nice. Now I used this really strong Gorilla Tape to attach the light strip to the table. I didn't want to actually peel off the light strip because I'm going to use it somewhere else probably in the future, but it made a really great strip of light from the orange table to the yellow table to the blue table. And again, before I started building the dominoes, I had to secure the tables as well, so I did tape the tables to the ground as well as the tables to the other tables that they were sitting on top of, because I don't want to accidentally knock down the table or bump it in a way that's going to hit the dominoes. I made sure that everything that isn't supposed to move is actually like secured down. Once the tables were secured, I was finally able to start setting up the dominoes. And of course, I'm going to start by building underneath the tables, because if I start building on top of the table and then go underneath the table, that's going to be a hassle and I'm definitely going to bump something. So I had to like lay down on the ground for a lot of this part. It was very uncomfortable, not gonna lie. Generally, I would have built the domino setup on the floor first and then placed the table, but I don't know if that was really feasible just because I had to figure out the placement in exactly where the tables would go and also figure out the lights. And I also didn't want to like overthink it too much, so we just kind of went with it, and I laid in these very uncomfortable positions to set up the dominoes, especially underneath the orange one, but it worked out well. So the projects that I made were pretty standard freestyle tricks with curves, triangles, split-offs, field starters, smaller specialty tricks, maybe a couple of walls here and there. I wanted to keep it fairly simple just because it is somewhat difficult to see underneath the table, just because it's like, it has to be viewed from a very specific angle, and I don't want to get like super artsy, I guess, with that kind of stuff, just because it's like, it's harder to see. So I used the smaller specialty tricks, and I tried to incorporate some of my H5 Domino Creations accessories, like the half bridges, to elevate it in the back. I made sure that all the tricks in the back were higher than the ground level, just because I know it's going to be really hard to see, especially way back underneath the table. And by having these elevated or like half elevated bridges, it kind of makes it feel a little bit more put together, in the sense that it's easier to see it all in one camera view, and it just gives it some more depth, which I really like how it looks. So of course I used the same color dominoes as the color of the table underneath the table, and then I used the tape trick to go from the floor up to the table and then back down again. Yeah, all of these freestyle tricks were just kind of made up on the spot. I knew that for the blue table at least, I wanted to make a structure underneath it just because there was so much room compared to the other tables, and it needed a little bit of variation in the sense that I didn't want to just make a line. So I made a speed wall that gradually gets larger as you move toward the back. And you'll see that a lot of what I build, it starts in the front and ends in the back, just because when a domino line falls in the front of your setup, then it's easier to see things behind it because those dominoes have then fallen and they're not going to block your camera angle. And especially when you're filming like from the floor, you want to start the dominoes in the front and then end in the back so you can see all of the dominoes. And then once I finished building all of the domino projects underneath the tables, I was finally able to build on top of the tables. And I thought about the order of the toppling for a little bit because I didn't want it to seem predictable. I wanted it to be kind of an odd toppling pattern, in the sense that generally I feel like a person would think, oh, it's gonna start and do the dominoes on the bottom and then all of the dominoes on the top are going to fall one after the next. But I wanted to try something a little different and started on the bottom and then go back on top of the orange table, but then go back down again to the yellow section, and then go back up to the yellow section, then down to the blue section, and then up to the blue section on top. I feel like in this way, it also separates it from my previous domino record, because I had those H5 Domino Creations boxes that just went up the stairs, and I didn't want these tables to replicate that. I wanted to do something much different. So it's always going to start underneath the table and then go back up and then go back down again. And I realized I couldn't use the same color dominoes as the table on top of it, because the dominoes would actually blend in too much with the color table because it's the same color. So I realized, okay, I need to switch the colors. How about I build the next color table in the previous table? So on top of the orange table, I built with yellow dominoes, and on top of the yellow table, I built blue dominoes, and on top of the blue table, I built white dominoes. But I also added some dominoes of the same color just to add some accents and give a little bit of variation within the color scheme of that table. And again, here on top of the tables, you'll see the same sort of thinking where the higher structures are in the back and then the smaller structures are in the front. On the blue table, I was sort of running out of time, and I just kind of wanted to fill the space, to be quite honest. So here we have a general spiral. This is like a tri-spiral where one domino line goes in and then two lines go back out. And I wanted to play around with the color pattern in the sense that if you look at the dominoes in the center, you'll see on each line, it starts with one white domino and then goes to one blue domino. And then it goes to two white dominoes and then 1 white domino. So as I made the spiral larger, I would add 1 white domino to each line, separated by a blue domino. And I thought this would make a cool pattern because in the center of the spiral it would appear to be more densely filled with blue dominoes, and then as you go out towards the edge of the spiral it'll be more like spread out in the sense that it's not as heavily populated with blue dominoes. And it kind of reminds me of a snowflake. I feel like this would be really cool if it was built on like a really huge scale with thousands of dominoes, where you can really see the densely populated color in the middle and then it kind of becomes less intense on the circumference of the circle. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just something interesting that I tried out. It was kind of tricky figuring out how to arrange this, and also just building under the tables was really uncomfortable and kind of sketchy, especially when I was building that speed wall underneath the last table. And I think eventually I'll have it go back down again underneath the big white table. That'll probably be for a different video, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this whole thing came out. I think the lights especially really make this setup pop. The orange section here sort of reminds me of like a carnival at night. I don't know why. Something about the lights and like the way the dominoes are arranged with the double stacked dominoes. It just gives me that vibe. But then if you move on to the yellow section, that gives me like roller coaster vibes, going down a roller coaster and then going back up and around. And then if you move over to the blue section where we have the speed wall, it's just kind of like a larger roller coaster gradually getting bigger. But yeah, I hope this works. It's a little bit sketchy just because a lot of the dominoes are really closely packed together. I think afterwards I'm gonna go through and add some barriers and tape down some dominoes and just make sure that everything looks good. I want to make sure that this setup in particular is going to be flawless. So thank you so much for watching. If you haven't seen the other episodes in this series, I'll leave a link in the top right corner here. In next week's video, I'm gonna have a very special guest joining me. We will be finishing up this project together and I'm very excited. If you have any guesses on who it is, you can leave it in the comments. I also want to give a shout out to our featured community member, Radu Patrici, who has been making some awesome domino videos and making really good progress. Go check out their channel, and as always, I'm Lily Hevish, and keep on building.